Welcome back, everybody, to Surprised by Art. My name is Kirk Barbera, and today I'm going to surprise you and Luc Travers here with a poem. And Luc,
Hi, Kirk. My name is Luc Travers, and I'm going to surprise you and everybody out there, you, dear listener, with a painting.
now we choose these paintings and poems to surprise each other and you with based on a theme that we have pre-selected, and we'll tell you in just a second. But the theme comes from a movie this time. So this summer we're doing a mini series of these episodes. Last summer we did 10 episodes. This summer we're not going to say the number yet, but it's going to be just a limited series. So make sure you hold on to these tight and really enjoy every second of them, because they're not going to be forever and ever, and we're not going to do them, indeterminate amount of time. But these are actually the themes we're actually pulling out of movies. So we're actually pulling these out of movies. And Luc, do you want to tell them what movie and why we selected, and then tell the theme that you selected?
We're doing Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark because I like it. Well, also because
that's not why. That's why, but that's not the only reason. Everybody likes that.
Well, here's the idea. I mean, there's things going on in pop culture today, and I think we're kind of all excited about getting back to the movies. There might be movies coming out this summer that we're looking forward to. I know there's a TV show that I'm really looking forward to. Ted Lasso. We might be doing an episode of Ted Lasso. Not to spoil anything, but to kind of get our toes wet with thinking about how we can connect poetry and art to contemporary culture. I thought we'd do something that was that we both really, really like. And that's also the 40th anniversary of Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, the one and only Indiana Jones, who's played a big role in my life. And so we're going to select a theme connected to the movie or TV show or whatever contemporary form of art, and bring in past archaic dead art to see how they can interact with each other.
My soul by saying that. The noble dead and living dead, I think that's what I call them.
Oh,
I think that's what Wordsworth called them.
Oh, is that right? So
the noble, living, and dead.
Already being poetic. So Kirk, our topic for Indiana Jones is a sense of adventure. A sense of adventure.
Sense of adventure.
So what does that mean to you?
Which is great post-COVID, right?
Yes.
I think we're all in a desire for a sense of adventure. I have been saying for a long time, my hope is that we have a roaring 20s again, right? Like we have this, sense of risk. The Economist, the news or the magazine just did a long article on post-boom raises, like post pandemic booms, and that this is a common thing, that even after the plague in the 13th century, the Spanish flu, there was a increase in risk taking and adventure and going out in the world because people were so cooped up for so long. And I think that bottled up energy kind of burst out into things. And in fact, I think that is very relevant to Indiana Jones. And there's a historical point I'll point out, because what was going on is Indiana Jones, I think it was 1981, 1982 when it came out.
1981, 40th anniversary.
Oh, so 81. Yeah, thank you. So it's coming right after what's called this movement in Hollywood called New Hollywood, which is, Martin Scorsese's beginnings. And this is like a cynical, very, this is like after the, Watergate. We don't trust anybody. We have all these problems and recessions in the 70s. And then all of a sudden, we have a lot of movies like Taxi Driver, which are very dark and ominous and bad things happening. And then after this, all of a sudden you get in 1981, this movie about a scientist from 1936 who goes on these wild, great adventures based on these old serial comics from the 30s. And it was a huge hit, and people absolutely loved it. They were so ecstatic about this film for a good reason, because it kind of unleashed, I think, a lot of these bottled up feelings.
So you're describing the sense of adventure that's part of this movie as coming out of after a pandemic of cynicism.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now, Kirk, I know you were an adventurous fellow, and I'm curious, what comes to mind? Any memories, any dreams of adventure for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm as adventurous as you might think I am. I don't feel like I feel like I'm not as adventurous. So my adventures are like that I think of are like road trips, or I remember one thing I was thinking about was I went hiking in the summer in Aspen, which is gorgeous. So normally you go to Aspen for skiing, but you can actually, in the summer when everything's out, there's no snow, it's all melted. You can hike in those mountains that people normally ski in, and it is gorgeous up there. But I remember like one little adventure we went on is it started raining, and we tried our really hardest to get up this one path. We went there and we went on the other side of some hiking trail, and we kind of went off on our own, and we got lost for hours and hours and hours. And we actually started getting nervous. And then cause we're like, I have no idea how to get back to this place. I'm not an outdoorsman. It's like, wait, which way's west and east and up and down? I don't know. And luckily we ran into a gentleman who was like doing like multi-day hike or something. And he had like one of those water pumps because we had run out of water. So we actually went to a stream, and he made some water for us, made some fresh water for us. And we filled up our water bottles based on that. And finally, eventually, several hours later, we made it back to our cars. And
okay. So there are several elements in that little brief story that I'm hearing that make me perk up and think adventure. You're going off the beaten path. You're outside in nature, somewhere untrod, and then there's a little bit of danger. You get lost. Yeah, you've got to find your way back, and you encounter the guy with the water that helps you there. But I think those are elements that feel like they should be part of this idea of adventure. And I'm thinking of a differentiating adventure from something like an outing. Like, let's go on a picnic. And you can go on an outing or go on a hike. That might be an adventure, but it can also be something that's a little bit more of an outing where there isn't a sense of danger. And I'd add maybe for an adventure, you have a sense of mystery and maybe of daring. When I was younger, I used to go on a lot more adventures. So I'll give you one of those. I'd say one that immediately pops into mind is sailing the Mediterranean with my dad and his friend, and going from Greece to the Aeolian Islands in Sicily. And to do that, you've got to cross through the Strait of Messina, which is the point where Sicily and the boot of Italy meet each other. And this is the point at which all of these famed mythological disaster areas happen, Scylla and Charybdis and things like that. And the Strait of Messina is a dangerous kind of waterway. And we were going through at 3 a.m. And my dad and his friend is saying, hey, Luke, we're sleeping. You take charge of the boat. So I'm going through 3 a.m. into this, storm-like situation with two banks on each side of rocks, and I've got to make sure we're going straight through the strait. And so I put on the Last of the Mohicans soundtrack. If you haven't seen Last Mohicans, that's great. I associate adventure with that too. And just play that and charge through those waves with the danger, with I don't know what's coming in front of me. So that's just one little bit. And being older, maybe I'm a little bit more responsible, but I also still look for adventure. Last week I went on a road trip, kind of off the cuff. Let me go up the East Coast and check out art museums. I don't know where I'm going to stay. I'll figure it out on the way along. Isn't that what Indiana Jones says? I'm making this up as I go along.
I'm making this up as I go. Yeah, like he's asking him, "What's your plan?" It's like I'm making this up as I go. Yeah. Indiana Jones.
the movie Indiana Jones. What do you like about it? Any particular scenes? Anything in that resonates with you?
Yeah, so I rewatched it again for the first time in many years. I was telling you, a while back, and it's one of my dad's favorites, like the whole series. So I would watch it as a kid quite a bit, and it's wonderful. I'm reminded watching it again that it is a really fun, adventurous, joyous film. And when I looked at it, actually, I saw way more deeper things than I thought was there. It's not as purely superficial, although there's got some superficial fun stuff, but which is good. Um, I, I mean, I really liked that it's this scientist going out into the world trying to seek knowledge. I think one thing I didn't connect with earlier that I'm realizing is very important, that is something in the movie that's more than this theme of sense of adventure. So if we're just talking about Indiana Jones, it's, so the sense of adventure, obviously Indiana Jones has that. But one thing that I just noticed was that he starts off as this skeptical scientist of these supernatural things. But as the movie progresses, there's a lot of subtle hints. And then of course the conclusion, there's a big subtle revelation that the supernatural is there. And the supernatural is kind of guiding him and present from stage one of this quest that he's on. And so there are these, now that I'm a little bit more well-read than I was as a kid, I've read a lot of the romantics, a lot of literature that leads up to the ideologies we hold today. I noticed just this interesting clash or viewpoint in the story of the scientist seeking knowledge of, beyond what is of the natural world. And he's trying to get this supernatural. So it's like I thought of a kind of Frankenstein themes of trying to go beyond, or Hawthorne in some of his short stories, like Dr. Heidegger's Experiments, and all these 19th century science stories that are like trying to progress beyond what is known to the natural world. And that's what he becomes, that character by the end of the movie. He starts to become more believer in those things. And something that, like, it's not my favorite thing about it. It's just something I noticed. I wish it was more secular personally, but it ended up being the other one. But yeah, so that was some of my thoughts about the film. Doesn't say I didn't like it. I enjoyed the sense of adventure that is just like a pure comic book in a lot of cases.
So Kirk, like that's an interesting, you bring it up, that the supernatural aspect, and that there's what is a really funny scene when he's teaching in the classroom at the beginning, where he is putting the diagram of a grave site and saying things like archaeology is a search for fact. And so it's an interesting question. Why is the supernatural part added to it? And I think for me, what it does is it increases that sense of adventure by making it more mysterious as to what happens and what he's going after, and his discoveries. And so you have the typical, okay, let me go into a jungle and find things, and go through even a temple with traps and so forth, but then add another element to that where this is the power of God to it, and you're getting into something that is even more dangerous and daring and mysterious. And for me, it makes it more of an adventure. So the one thing that I was noticing this time around, and I was trying to really hone in on, why do I feel like this is adventurous to me? And it was the music. It was the music, Kirk, because everybody knows the main sound, the main music by John Williams, dun, 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 dun. But I was paying attention more to the other music in different parts and different scenes. And maybe when I share my painting with you and I surprise you with that, I'll indicate how some of the other scenes with some of the other music that is not the grand march, but maybe more mysterious, more eerie, also contribute to that sense of adventure, that danger, as maybe you were feeling while you're walking through the woods trying to find, or down the mountain trying to find your way back to civilization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what do you say, Kirk? You ready for a painting?
Surprise me. Yes, I am. I'm definitely ready for a painting. I'm nervous because I know you want me to do this title, and I'm terrible, but I'm going to do my best. So hopefully you listeners will see me do this and fumble around and still see, if Kirk messes this up, and he does a lot of paintings, I'm going to explore paintings with Luc and all this stuff and not feel nervous, because it's actually fun. But man, I do, like, I always feel this pressure because it's like, I feel like I'm supposed to be really good at this, and I'm not good at this at the time. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to have a good time. And this is an adventure because I don't know what's going to happen. What are you going to share with me? It could be something that like connects with me.
Way to bring it back, Kirk. Okay,
right.
Let's go.
Let's do this.
And here it is.
Oh my gosh, I think of Garden of Eden, Paradise.
Garden of Eden, Paradise. Okay. So what do you see going on?
There's no. So that I guess is my first thought. Or even Jurassic Park. If anything, Jurassic Park for some reason. Maybe I have Steven Spielberg on the mind. Is that a swan way out in the background?
Oh, so you're looking deep into the background and you're already looking for...
I told this, like I always look for humans, like, so this is a really interesting one. That looks like a swan for sure. I mean, the lighting is gorgeous. I really like...
Give us more of a description of what you see.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm forgetting not everybody's going to be watching. So we have a jungle, like it looks like a river, and with verdure on both sides, a variety of vegetation on either side of the painting. On the left side is this really interesting, big, old, thick tree of some sort, covered in vines. So it's like this ancient tree. This is, thing about nature is just how it's always been there, right? Man will be here for a few measly decades, but this tree will last forever. We have it looks like we have a fallen piece of lumber here, a fallen tree trunk in the foreground, with these nice little birds on a branch. And I mean, this is just a wonderful image of nature out but this is wild, wild nature. This is not nature that like you're gonna like Indiana Jones could do this, but I would, I got lost on a trail in Aspen. I would be dead in a few minutes in this trail. Like this is like legit nature. You got to be prepared for lions and tigers and bears.
Great. Oh, you got to be prepared for. Okay, you mentioned Jurassic Park. Do you think you should be prepared for dinosaurs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could definitely see this being like a scene from, paleo. What's the term of the Jurassic era of
there you go.
Whatever the dinosaur era. I can't remember.
It is the Jurassic era.
So I could definitely see this as a scene. There is, so we have this darkness on the left side, and we have like in the center at the top, this, the sun, but it's not like a harsh beating down. It's a very pleasant light. I could definitely see myself, on a boat, safe from probably all the snakes and stuff in that water, I would imagine. But like on a boat, just kind of relaxing, going down. It makes me think of the Jungle Cruise in Disneyland. Like I could see myself going in there as long as I'm protected with the guy with the gun, right? Shooting the out. Have you ever been on the Disney cruise?
No,
have you been on the Disney?
A long time ago. But there's a movie coming out.
There's a movie. They're gonna ruin.
The Rock
is
doing it. Yeah,
ruin my childhood. But yeah, so like there's a guy with an alligator comes out every time he shoots the alligator, and a hippo comes out. I could definitely see like these birds are scared because there's probably a hippo that just came by or something. So on the right side there's a flock of birds. I think that's a flock of some kind of white seabird or.
You were going to say flock of seagulls and then bring us back to 1980s music.
I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm too.
Well, speaking of music, what kind of, if you were to play a soundtrack to this, what mood would it have? Would it be adventurous? Would it be dramatic? Would it be energetic? Would it be calm? Would it be peaceful?
I see this as like almost, people are coming to this scene out of a wild adventure. So there's this Daniel Radcliffe movie. I can't remember what it's called right now. Like some independent film he did that I watched thinking like I was watching with a friend, we thought it was going to be this horror film of him going, but it's just him lost in the jungle, trying to get out of the jungle. And that's it. Cause he gets separated while they're rafting. So I kind of feel that like, this is like there's rafting right before this or something. And there's like whitewater rapids. It's crazy. Or you just go out there and then like you open the leaves and this beautiful scene of like relaxation. I mean, I get this as a very pleasant, mostly because the lighting as like, this is like the journey, the end of the journey type thing. And so
Got it. So you've been going through the jungle and it's harsh and what do you call it? Legit nature.
legit
And
nature.
you need you need Dwayne the Rock Johnson there with a gun to help you through that jungle and to make sure no crocodiles are coming out at you. And then you come out onto this scene.
Mm.
The sun kind of covered up by cloud and mist shining down onto the river, a very still river, right?
Mm.
And then you can imagine yourself being on a boat there. So it's a kind of relief that you're feeling. So on one hand, you're feeling danger and then this sense of relief.
Yeah,
So,
like I said, it makes me think of movies like right at the beginning when they're calm before the storm,
yeah,
or like right after a difficult journey. And
yeah.
this is where they're coming to, and there's something crazy about to happen or that just happened.
So this is what I immediately thought of when I was thinking of, oh, well, I gotta say, I saw this last week on my road trip adventure at the National Gallery of Art. And it's a pretty big painting. I'd say maybe 7-8 feet by 5 feet.
Wow.
So it's cinematic.
Yeah.
And the details that you see, the little birds on the branch, the gnarled trees, you really see them in stark detail. And then also you have, as you're describing, that second half deeper as the river goes on, you have this sense of it's very light and peaceful and relief inducing. And you mentioned what you thought might be a swan over there. And I want to zoom in a little bit on this for you and point out a couple things. Do you see what looks like maybe a very, very deep back there, little hut type of structure?
Yeah, I see it a little bit. Or I see something that looks like it might be man-made is what it looks like. Yeah.
And then this figure over here.
Yeah.
Could it be a person on a boat? On like a canoe?
It's honestly, it's too pixelated.
Yeah.
I'd have to be like,
you'd have to be there with the artwork.
Yeah, you'd have to. This is one of those times when like you need to put your face as close as the docent will let you.
Absolutely. No, so I was thinking to myself,
so go see art,
is
people.
This is not, this is not Indiana Jones chasing the Nazis through the desert. This is not where the triumphal march dun, 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 comes in. This is one of those eerie, quiet moments, even like that opening scene from Indiana Jones when he's going through the jungle. And I figured I might play a piece of that music and see if you think it matches up some.
Let's do it.
And let me know when you hear it.
I hear.
So I'm imagining you, Kirk, with your fedora and your leather jacket and your whip.
You're the second person in a week who's talked about a fedora, and I did used to have one in college.
You should have worn it for the show. And you're walking or trudging through the jungle.
Yeah.
As you come through.
Is this the beginning?
It is the beginning.
Yeah. What's interesting, like, so I do see that fits with this picture for sure. They're walking through the jungle, right? And then actually Indiana Jones is revealed. This is a very interesting scene coming from the forest, and he's silhouetted the whole time before this, and then he's kind of in darkness, and he kind of comes halfway into the light, right? And so this really sets up a lot of the themes of the movie. And I think this painting definitely captures that with the stress of light and then this kind of eerie darkness on the side, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect match. I mean, you could definitely see him finding some ancient temple somewhere in these forests on the left here, right?
I mean, if it's not dinosaurs and if it's not hippopotami, and it's definitely a Peruvian temple. And so there's another section of the movie that this painting made me think of, and it's that sense of coming out into the open that you were feeling, that what you call relief, that you really see in when you get to the sun and the still river. And it's almost like an impressionist painting in its and its beauty and its peacefulness, and it kind of induces a little bit of awe. And it made me think of another scene where he is in the so-called map room, and he's going to try to find a location of the ark, and he's there by himself, and he's holding up that staff, and he's waiting for the light to shine onto the staff and then onto the whatever the gem he's got that's going to mark the position. And I thought that the music at that point really matched this second part of the painting, where you have this kind of awe-inducing quiet serenity. Shall I play that for you?
The music?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, go for it. Let's hear it. Oh yeah, right away. I remember this.
So I can imagine maybe going along that river, and it keeps going and keeps going.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And the sun is starting to come out, and the light is starting to shine brighter and brighter.
And something's building.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of building. Yeah, and I think like when you watch the movie Indiana Jones, I mean, this has been talked about so many times in film. This is actually in, like, I studied film in college. It's actually in film books. You could study the light and shadow and darkness of that film, of the cinematography. And that's a huge theme. Like you'll often see Indiana Jones associated with sunlight and the light. You know, his plane will go off in, you know, basically go right in the sunlight. When they're digging, when they find the actual place, they're digging, and they're all the men digging around, and he's kind of, you know, standing there with the sunlight bathing over all of him. Even in the room where they're kind of the exposition scene where the government agents are talking to him, if you pay attention, there's one of those window, like a church type window that, and it's like kind of bathing him in light
and creating that atmosphere, creating that mood. And that's the same music that's being played there that I just played for this.
Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah. And then of course, like he has the sun, like with the staff in this room that you're talking about, he's controlling the sun almost, right? So he's always associated with that as like, you know, and then the Nazis are associated, of course, with darkness, obviously. And they come in when to Marion's bar, and he's got his hat and he's cowled and complete darkness.
Oh, it sounds like you're getting into some poetic symbolism here. And before you share a poem with me, I think let me see. Is there anything else that I want to mention here? Yeah. So I think of this painting as not the dramatic parts, not of an adventure, not me crashing through the waves, going through the Straits of Messina, or fighting off a bear. I've never fought off a bear. Maybe you have, Kirk. I've seen a bear rug at your place. You know, or speeding on a motorcycle, you know, or something energetic. This is for me the more quiet parts of an adventure, the danger, the eeriness, and then the sense of discovery, of feeling awe at discovering something. All right.
Well, I just want to say, I think that's amazing. One, it makes me excited about the poem I'm about to share with you, but also I think like that's a really good thing of when we think about adventure. More than likely, we probably only think of the wild fists flying, the moment of climax, but we forget that there's a lot of buildup necessary to get to that, right? There's a lot of moments of just tranquility, or just going through the motions, or getting there, the process of getting there. And, you know, this is a good reminder that those moments can be enjoyable, and it's great to fight off the bad guy and to shoot the guy who in the marketplace who's going to kill you with a sword. My favorite scene in the movie when he's like exhausted and he's going, you know, there's a lot of that in Indiana Jones, but there's also a lot of like reflection, of waiting for the next moment, and, you know, thinking about where you're going to go next. So I think that's
great. You just one quick little detail that I really, really like, that is the quiet part of, and the building of anticipation. It's when they superimpose a map of the world, and that red line goes from town to town to city
Yeah.
for the destination. And I'm always fascinated by the exotic locales that the plane is going to stop and where he's going to end up.
Yeah.
And so that makes me think of planning for an adventure. When I think of, oh, I'm going to go, I want to travel to Egypt one day, and okay, where am I going to go, and preparing. And then when I get there, there's that sense of, okay, now is the discovery time is here, and I start to walk through the desert or the marketplace or wherever I am.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kirk, I am looking forward to the poem.
All right, let's share a poem now. So let me get it prepped. All right, here we go. The poem is called The Boat Stealing Scene from the 1850 Prelude by William Wordsworth. So I couldn't resist a Wordsworth reference and a Wordsworth reading, but I we'll go through this and then we'll talk a little bit about it. But it's just so you know, though, this is an excerpt. So the prelude is over 8,000 words or lines. So it's
sounds like the main body and not a prelude.
Yeah. So the prelude. Well, so we could talk about that if you're interested later why it's called the prelude. I
want to hear you recite this poem to me.
Yeah, but so just you do need to know one thing about what happened right before. So basically, he's reflecting on his youth, right? So it's adult Wordsworth reflecting on when he was a kid.
Doesn't he do a lot of that?
That's a big part of who he is, as a poet, And just so you know, he's thinking about her as in nature. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
So her as nature. Think of her being nature. Okay. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. All right. So you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. The boat stealing scene from the prelude. One summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cove, its usual home. Straight, I unloosed her chain and, stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on, leaving behind her still, on either side, small circles glittering idly in the moon, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light. But now, like one who rose, proud of his skill, to reach a chosen point with an unswerving line, I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary. Far above was nothing but the stars and the gray sky. She was an elfin pinnace. Lustily, I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and, as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan. When, from behind that craggy steep, till then the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct, upreared its head. I struck and struck again, and growing still in stature, the grim shape towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own and measured motion like a living thing, strode after me. With trembling oars, I turned, and through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree. There in her mooring place, I left my bark. And through the meadows homeward went, in grave and serious mood. But after I had seen that spectacle for many days, my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being. O'er my thoughts there hung a darkness, call it solitude or blank desertion. No familiar shapes remained, no pleasant images of trees, of sea or sky, no colors of green fields, but huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men, moved slowly through the mind by day and were a trouble to my dreams.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So that's very, very cool and very interesting. And I can see why you're excited about having it paired with the painting.
Yeah, I think there are similarities.
So
I think. I don't see what you think.
Okay, so I've never read this poem before. It's the first time I'm hearing it. Here's my my quick summary of what's going on. So he decides to take a boat and row off and into nature. And as he's rowing off into nature, what happens is that he comes upon this huge crag, dark form that kind of chills him. And so he turns around a little bit, leaves boat behind, and walks away from that ominous sight. But that ominous sight stays with him. So it's a bit of, it makes me think of some of those, that part of adventure when you come upon the dangerous location. Like if you're going through the forest here and you're in the painting and you're on that boat and you kept going and then suddenly you came upon something that looked even more daunting and dangerous. A little bit like Indiana Jones coming to the entrance of the Peruvian temple in the opening scene, and his assistants say they get scared, but he keeps going. So this is more, I could not go on with the adventure. The danger also of it stays with me till this day.
I can't believe, I think you got like the deepest part of the interpretation on the first read. That's amazing.
Hey, I'm an expert. I'm a poetry expert.
And I hope I chose correctly in this case then, because it seems like it connected. But I think that's it. I mean, this is, so there is that sense of adventure, right? Where he's stealing a boat, right? He finds this boat. So it's called this boat stealing scene. He's a young kid and he's out on an adventure. And the reason I thought of this with Indiana Jones is because you don't have to be like, sometimes these small moments can be big adventures in your mind, especially when you're a kid, which I think is why Indiana Jones is so great. So this is just him stealing a boat by himself. So think about yourself as like an 8-year-old boy going out out in the forest or, out in nature. And then you get in this boat that isn't yours. That's what he means by troubled pleasure. It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure because he's kind of, I think, guilty. He knows it's wrong.
He knows he enjoys doing this. Yeah.
It's like a joyride. He's taking this thing out on a joyride. He knows he's not supposed to do this. We all know that.
Kirk, have you ever done that before?
Oh yeah. There's my adventures. I used to go out when I was a kid. We would like leave, even when I was like 6, 7 years old, we would like do these things we called them mids. Midnight, we'd sneak out of the house, go and play, out and play something stupid, tag or just go as far as we could figure out how to get to as kids at like midnight at like 7 years old. And then, when I was older, I would, take a car, and go.
I'm surprised you're here with us and not in some penitentiary.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't steal a car. Sorry, not that.
It's just borrow it.
Borrow it from my parents or something like not like
you made
a
it
neighbor.
Sound like you just went
sorry,
through the streets.
I'm not that bad. I was a good kid overall. But so we all know that feeling of troubled pleasure, I hope, where it's like you're not supposed to be somewhere, you can be caught at any moment. But I really love that phrase, it was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure. But so I think like your interpretation though is spot on. Like I wrote a summary, but you actually summed it up even better than my summary.
So I'm just looking back at some of the lines here about especially the ominous thing that he's looking at. So a little bit earlier. I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary. Far above was nothing but the stars and the gray sky. She was an elfin pinnace. What is a pinnace?
It's a boat.
Oh, so he's talking about the boat. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a literary way of saying.
All right, so he went from
an
talking
elf
about.
Boat. Okay. So I do think there's a relationship between like an imaginary realm that he's kind of entering into.
Okay. Lustily, I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and I rose upon the stroke. My boat went heaving through the water like a swan. when from behind that craggy steep, till then the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct, upreared its head. Okay, so he comes upon the crag, and then he comes upon a mountain above that.
Mm-hmm. So what is the
And
mountain
that's what
doing,
scares him.
by the way?
What's that?
What do you think is happening with the mountain?
What do you mean?
What do you, like? What do you see the mountain act? Because he's talking about with voluntary power instinct, and it upreared its head.
Oh, I think it's just that he's coming closer and closer, and as he's getting closer, suddenly it comes up above him.
Well, what about? But look at this next sentence here.
I struck and struck again, growing still in stature. The grim shape towered up between me and the stars. I think what he means by struck and struck again is he strikes the oar.
Yes, no, but keep going. There's
and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own and measured motion, like a living thing, strode after me. Oh, I think it's totally his imagination.
What is it?
Well, it's not like Indiana Jones where it's the supernatural is coming here into effect. It's
I think it is actually. So I think there's a bit of imagination. Yes, you're right. So the way I understand this is that the mountain in his imagination is chasing him. Yeah. So it's not just that he sees it, but it strode after him.
Yeah. No, right? Absolutely.
And now the way I see this is I envision this as a literal thing for a moment. And, so there's a hill, and, when you're close to a hill, you see that your perspective is that, and there could be something bigger behind it, but because you're so close, you can't see it. As he's actually going out into the lake farther, the mountain in his perspective is changing. The mountain behind the hill is growing and growing. But in his imagination at dark with this troubled pleasure, it feels to him like it's actually getting bigger and bigger and chasing after him. Now, then put that into his grave mood that you talked about earlier, and look at the shift that, but after I had seen the spectacle for many days, my brain worked with this undetermined sense of things, and over my thoughts there hung a darkness. And then look at this, how no familiar shapes remain, no pleasant images of trees, of sea or sky, no colors of green fields. And now this is one thing where I think a little bit of, I guess, what happened before in the prelude, that he always associates nature, or had associated nature with almost like a playground, like a fun, light, enjoyable moment. But this dark thing that happened showed him another side of huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men, move slowly through my minds by day, and were the trouble of my dreams. And
all right, so this is the memory that sticks with him of this adventure is the fear and danger that it caused him, and that stuck with him.
Yeah.
And that's if there was a painting to be made of this poem, I'm thinking now it would not be this painting that by Frederick Edwin Church that I showed you, that I surprised you with. That rather it would be one where you have that ominous looking mountain that's chasing you on the little boat.
So the scene that I think of actually in Indiana Jones is when he goes to see, so after Marion is presumed dead. So Indiana Jones has been going on this adventure, and everything's kind of like there's danger, but he wins. He's the lighthearted hero. There aren't real consequences. But then Marion dies in his mind, right? And then when you remember, he's extremely dark, and they're foreboding and grave. And he goes to Belloc, and he says, he goes there to commit suicide and kill Belloc at the same time. He's saved by the little crowd of boys from Shalott. Yeah. But he goes there and he says, let's meet God together. Let's, you want to see God? Because they're talking about the Nazis. Let's meet him together. And to me, that is what really represents this poem here. And what happened with the transformative moment for Wordsworth is that life and adventure, nature, and for Indiana Jones, the seeking of this knowledge is all good fun and games, right? There's not real danger to it. It's just some danger for other people, But now something has shifted in him, and he realizes that there's real foreboding bad things that can happen.
Yeah, but because he's Indiana Jones, he still goes to that mysterious island where they're going to have that ritual.
It doesn't stop him.
Yeah.
Or Wordsworth.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, okay, Indiana Jones, what would stick with him more, the poem or the painting?
More?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. I mean, I think they both cover. So the poem, I think, covers your sense, that sense of serenity that you're talking about. At one point, the totality of it has the darkness that maybe is in the corners of the painting.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly don't know.
Yeah, no. I can, maybe there's a better way to ask the question, but what I'm thinking of is, would Indiana Jones identify with the narrator of the poem as an adult, and remember the fear that caused him to turn the boat around, or would he instead look at that ominous crag, the mountain that rises above, and be thrilled by it and want to go forward and figure out what is on that mountain or within it?
Yeah, so I think there's a scene or two scenes in the movie that actually answer this, in my view. So in, I said this earlier, that he goes from this kind of skeptical scientist to kind of believing more that there is a supernatural. And I do see the mountain, the big mountain striding as kind of this, there's something more in nature than I can understand, right? This is what the Romantics called the sublime, right? This awe, and so there's something bigger and grander in nature. And I think there's the moment with the rocket launcher where Indiana Jones is going to blow up the Ark, and Belloc says, "You're not going to blow it up. I'm not worried about you blowing it up because you want to see it opened as much as I do." And then at the very end, and sorry, spoilers alert for this, so turn it off if you haven't seen after 40 years Indiana Jones. But I don't know why you're here if you haven't. Come on, go watch it first. And then, but so at the very end, one of the questions people ask is, how did Indiana Jones know to not look, to close his eyes? And I think that is kind of the lessons he's learned. He's taken the advice of the imam who says, "Do not disturb this." Salah says, "You're going too far. There's something powerful beyond you." And that's what he kind of learns. There is that power. So he says, "Close your eyes to Marion. Don't look at it." And he's right. Like, it's not just a historical artifact. It's a supernatural power. And I think that is what he kind of learns in that moment, just like in this poem, that there's a kind of respect for this power of nature or the supernature.
Okay. So he would see the possible supernatural, like you were hinting at, in that the mountain rising up and chasing the kid.
That there's something more that he doesn't understand that's out there, and that he's going to respect it. And agree.
But he's going to find it first. He's going to find it first.
Oh, he already found it. But remember, he found the Ark early on, and then they stole it from him. But he's not going to look at it, right? So the mystery of the Ark is that if you touch it, you die.
Yeah.
If you open it, you and everybody dies.
Yeah.
The other view is the Nazis believe it might also give them ultimate invincible power. Yeah. Right. So yeah.
All right. So looking at the combination of Indiana Jones, the painting by Frederick Edwin Church called "The River of Light," and
that's awesome.
The poem of by William Wordsworth called, what's the poem called again?
Boat Stealing Scene.
Yeah,
from the Prelude. Mm-hmm. It's actually early on in the Prelude, and it's the 1850 version of the Prelude.
Okay. So what we have is Indiana Jones entering into two different worlds of adventure. In the River of Light, this is the exploration and a little bit of the awe of discovery.
Well, but it's like the beginning part of the poem, right? It's what he's going out into the tranquil, and now the painting has on the sides a dark side that if we adventured out there, we'd see that scary mountain or that, powerful Ark. But the painting, I think, focuses on that tranquil moment in the first part of the poem I selected. That's why I thought there was a deep connection there. That they're very similar, that he's, he has this line, like, look at this line. I think this line is beautiful. So when he's rowing, did my boat move on, leaving behind her. So he's rowing, right? We have this view of him rowing, leaving behind her still on either side, small circles glittering idly in the moon until they melted all into one track of sparkling light.
Yeah. And I can imagine that being a part of
that painting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like if there was a structure there, or if that is a boat that you're with a guy on it, which it might be from, if, like you said, I trust you, that is a boat, that you could see that we could picture those small circles. And then if this was, glittering in the sun in this case, and maybe into one track of, so I definitely see that connection there.
So Kirk, where's your next adventure going to be?
Well, so that's a longer story. So, my next adventure, I guess the simple answer is I'm saving up because I really want to do a tour of the Romantic poets in England, the English. I really, really want to do, if I can only, depending on how much I can save up and how long I want to wait, I don't know if I'll be able to do all the big six. That might be a big adventure, too big, but I would love to do some of the adventures of Wordsworth. He wrote this poem early in his life called An Evening Walk, and he has all these great poetry about, the Lake District in England. I'd love to go out there and kind of explore some of those things, because again, like these moments, he takes these things that we all, so we're not actually fighting Nazis. I want to make this point. You're not actually fighting Nazis. What? You might be. I'm not fighting Nazis yet. Although I guess there are Nazis out there. That's another story. But, that's not our day-to-day life, but life is an adventure. It's exciting. What I love about Wordsworth is he takes these moments of just going out on a boat, and it's this grand epic adventure, just like Indiana Jones. And I think that's how we can live life. And you can go out on a walk with your dog or a hike down the road, and you go through this adventure that is an epic adventure on par with Indiana Jones, on par with Odysseus in his travels to get home to Ithaca.
Well, I'm looking forward to
what about all
kinds of adventures.
What about your adventure?
It's going to be Egypt. It's going to be Germany, Japan. And I just have to find all the travel partners who want to come with me. So if you're out there and you want to join me in an adventure, let me know. And Kirk, maybe we'll go on an adventure together one day.
Yeah, man.
Kirk, this is a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right, Luke. Thank you. All right. So everybody stick around for our next episode, and we're going to have a couple more of these. And thank you so much for watching or listening to Surprised by Art with Luc and Kirk. We'll see you next time.